In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern where we still have a major potential snowstorm and potential blizzard along the eastern seaboard that we're going to be tracking. Still, the GFS model hinting that that is going to be possible, dropping that low into the lower 970s, a very intense storm system and likely one of the stronger snowstorms that we've seen in years if that happens to verify. We do have a new monthly outlook from the National Weather Service over at the Climate Prediction Center for January, which looks very, very cold. We're going to be going over those temperatures where we expect severe cold, really some of the coldest temperatures that we have seen in recent years, maybe even the past 10 years. So let's go ahead and dive into all of this. We're taking a look here at the past 30 days. So this doesn't include the first day of December. And what we see is colder temperatures overall along the eastern United States here. And really what we're going to see if we added that first day, and we can't unfortunately, but we would see even colder temperatures in here. Really warmer along the west in particular, but also for a lot of the central states it's been quite warm. Let's take a look here at the 6 to 10 day outlook, which is updated, and this looks very similar, warm along the west coast, even upwards into Alaska here. So going all the way up the west coast of North America. This is for January 6th through 10th. We see very cold temperatures for both the central and the eastern states here, but the heart of it being over the kind of Midwest plains and into the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, as well as the deep south. As we take a look here at the 8 to 14 day outlook, just a little bit later, this is for January 8th through 14th, and looking even colder, in particular, the southeast corner of the nation looking very, very cold. This is exactly what we've been showing for days now, and the National Weather Service is definitely on board, as we can see here. West looks the same, very warm all the way up into Alaska. As we take a look at the 3 to 4 week outlook, which has not been updated really for multiple days now. I think this is like 5 days ago, and we see cold in the east, warm in the west for the 11th through the 24th even. Now it gets even better because we finally have an update for that January outlook here from the Climate Prediction Center, and here it is. Colder for almost all of the east for the entirety of the month of January, which really shouldn't be a surprise. We know that severe cold is expected through the 15th for the most part in January, and when you get a very cold first half, they've even flirted with after the 15th there being some cold. There's no denying that cold is the trend here, starting out in the northern plains and upper Midwest and really extending down into the southeast. A little warmer in the northeast, which is a bit of a surprise. A lot of this is coming due to what we call negative NAO. I'm not going to write it out because it's kind of hard to do with this pen, but negative NAO. And that really just means warmer temperatures, higher pressure over areas near Greenland and eastern Canada. And I think it's so negative that we're seeing some of that trickle into New England, which we do see sometimes. I think that's exactly what we're seeing happen here. But just like all of our outlooks we just looked at, it kind of follows the trend of warm in the west, also extending up into Alaska, which we call a positive PNA, which stands for Pacific North American Oscillation. That really just means warmer temperatures over western North America, which we obviously see for the majority of January here. And what this does, especially when coupled with this negative NAO look, is it forces this cold air specifically down into the southeast. If we didn't have this negative NAO so strong, you would likely see a lot of this in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic as well, maybe even the heart of it being a little further north, but both of these are causing it to funnel in towards the Southeast, which is a very unique pattern, and I think that this is going to be the effect that causes us to see snowfall in deeper south areas than what would be typical. At least the chances will be there constantly almost. This is our brand new 18Z outlook. I was kind of pre-making a lot of my videos the last couple of days, but I'm making this at 6:18 p.m. today. So we're seeing a very updated round of model runs here. And what we see is that by the time we reach this, well, tomorrow afternoon, actually, on January 1st, we're already seeing some snowfalls. We get a little bit of a snowstorm over the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, some snowfall, especially in the interior areas and the higher elevations. This is pulling cold air in. It's been very mild today on the 31st. Happy New Year's, by the way, as everybody's kind of celebrating it tonight. We see this cold air pouring in eastward already by January 1st. And if you guys have been keeping up with the videos, you know this is exactly what we've been calling for days, maybe even weeks now. So definitely everything's going according to plan. And what we see is that also the west is kind of gradually warming, which has also been expected. Again, that positive PNA look starts with some warmer temperatures pushing up the west coast. This effect is going to get a lot more intense a little bit later on. We do have snow falling for tomorrow over the northwest as well. You should keep that in mind. Now, as we move towards Thursday afternoon on January 2nd, things get a little bit cooler in the east. A little bit drier though as well. We see this really, this is more standard cooldown. We're talking in terms mostly of 10 to 15 degrees below normal. So a lot more like what we've seen throughout December, typical colder pattern. A lot of people will probably be saying, it's been colder lately, but it's not going to be like, this is crazy cold. So we're not in that territory yet by the 2nd, is what I'm thinking at this point. The 3rd, we do cool down a little bit here. So a little bit further, we see some snowfall showers as well for the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Appalachian Mountain Range. And this western warmth is pushing further northward, but we're still not in full swing effect by any means yet. Saturday, the 4th here, still rather cold in the east. We are seeing some of this warmth extend a little bit further eastward, more towards the Rockies, and we can see the south central states. What we're going to see happen over time is a low is going to really get its act together out here. And it's going to kind of slide through somewhere. There's a lot of discrepancy here. I mean, we see some models pushing it way down underneath North Carolina, bringing snowfall to the Carolinas and Virginia here. And then some other models, mostly the European model, pushing it much more into the mid-Atlantic here. And we see much more of a northern snowfall event from this one. But it does seem like this one has been trending snowier. So this is not our major blizzard that we've been talking about that is possible nearby the 10th. Keyword is possible here, right? Because it's just model runs. A lot of you are new to the channel. We've received, I think, like 10,000 new subscribers, which I'm so thankful for, obviously. But it's important to note that my channel is not really forecasts. I do put my opinion out there, but we really just go over the model runs together every single day. I give the raw data to you guys, and I try to decipher a lot of it, but this isn't a forecast. This is just what the GFS model is showing, I guess, is what we should say. Again, you'll know when I'm talking about my opinion, because I'll probably start it off by saying, this is what I think, or, etc. It should be obvious, but this is not like a map that I've drawn up by any means. This is not my forecast. With all that being said, let's continue this on towards Sunday the 5th. And like I said, this low gets its act together near Oklahoma, Texas. This is the GFS model. This is our more southern model for this snowfall. We do see heavy snowfall occurring for Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois. This does pose a threat for my neck of the woods areas in North Carolina. But again, only this GFS model and some others show this snowfall this for far south. We see the European model alongside some others showing it a bit further north with rainfall for these more southern areas like Virginia and North Carolina. So this is not locked in, even though we're kind of into the medium range, getting towards shorter range where we're about 5 days away, where we really start to hone down the forecast. There's quite a bit of possibilities here. Unfortunately, it makes my job a little difficult. As we take a look here at the overnight hour, so this is about 10 a.m., and once we've kind of reached past overnight, we see the Ohio Valley getting a good amount of snowfall here. Your low is nearby, I'd say, southern Tennessee here, and we see snowfall throughout northern North Carolina, throughout Virginia. This would be a pretty big snowmaker for areas that have not seen snowfall in a good, 4 or 5 years. In many cases here, pretty heavy too. It's short-lived, northern North Carolina, Virginia. This would be a pretty decent, 2, 3, 4-inch snow system, maybe with a bullseye of like 6, 7 inches, maybe. If, again, that's not my prediction, that is what this model is showing, so I'm breaking it down. But we see it kind of start to dissipate once we reach the 7 p.m. time frame here of Monday. So it lasts through the morning and through the day, kind of ending in the evening. But again, because we have this Arctic air, the highs are cold enough for this to produce snowfall during the day. It reminds me of a snow system we saw, what was the year? Maybe like a 2016 or 2017 snow event here in Virginia and North Carolina. It was supposed to almost be an exclusively North Carolina snow event, but we saw a lot in Virginia too. I think we got about 3 inches, which was, we were expecting 0. So it was a lot for that instance. But we have seen daytime snow events in these areas, although it's less common, obviously, than nighttime, but it does happen. So I want to make sure everybody knows it's not like an impossible feat. It does happen sometimes. Tuesday, quite a bit drier on the 7th, but this is when we're getting much more of that major cold air. By now, it's been like 5-6 days where we've primarily had cold air, but this is going to be getting dramatically worse in a hurry by the 7th here. Also note that we have some moisture building around the Gulf. This is where we're watching for the potential development of a nor'easter, where we could get this thing to come up the coast as a major snow system, so it all starts out near Texas. Let's take a look at what happens by the time we're reaching Wednesday. Get a lot of this Gulf moisture. Watch this. So we see the Gulf moisture, and then this jet stream continues to dip closer to the Gulf of Mexico. And this is what could pull this moisture up and cause it to spin up and cause a much more major system as this cold keeps intensifying by Wednesday the 8th. Here is Thursday the 9th, and a lot of that moisture does not get pulled up the coast. But we see another round of it start to try to develop. We have this northern piece of energy here. We have the Arctic air mass right by the end. We have a low here over Michigan. It actually has a cold front, warm front dynamic, but it's so cold that all of it is coming as snowfall. Pretty rare stuff here, but we have this very intense Arctic air mass, really a polar vortex here over the Dakotas and Minnesota, so that makes things a little easier. And then we get this second round of moisture in the Gulf as this jet stream is just sitting right over them. Again, that's producing the pool to the east that we need to pull that moisture up into more northern areas. As we keep going towards Friday afternoon, we see things start to develop. We see this low to the north still around. It has a cold front. Then it almost seems like a secondary low wants to develop underneath, and this is the one that we would be watching for to move up the coast. I think the biggest problem for this model run is that we don't get a clear, concise, singular spot of low pressure. We almost get a broad area of low pressure like this, where there's low pressure throughout it. And that creates an overall weaker storm than what we've been seeing. Keep in mind, this is still a pretty massive snow system, and it does drop very low in pressure. But the end result is a little less intense because of this. So keep that in mind as we move forward. This polar vortex has dipped down into now Iowa and Missouri here as it continues its trek kind of towards the southeast. And then it's located near somewhere in Kentucky, maybe. The center of this cold air mass is somewhere out here. We see, again, broad low pressure all around this area, and we're getting heavy snowfall for areas in the mid-Atlantic, up into the northeast here, but it's a messier system than we've seen on previous model runs. This is why I always tell you guys, these things are going to change, they're going to move around, and we have to take it with a grain of salt, because we're seeing these really volatile changes from model run to model run, and that can be expected for a little while here. But the important thing is that a storm signal is there. We're seeing major storms being outputted by the models, and we have that severe cold in place. So the cold is the harder piece to bring into the puzzle. We have that in place. That is almost guaranteed. It's the storm and the storm placement that we still need, and that's a little easier to see change around in the models to be more favorable long term. So we have our fingers crossed, obviously, that some folks see snowfall in here. I mean, I've seen the comments where it's like, why is everybody cheering for a massive blizzard? I don't think anybody wants anything dangerous, obviously, but I am hopeful that a lot of you that have been hoping for snow do see some. I'm definitely cheering for all of you, and myself, obviously, here in Virginia, but definitely all of you as well. 971 here, so like I said, it's still just as intense almost, but we have this like broader center of low pressure. We get heavy snowfall up here in the mid-Atlantic and northeast. This is by Saturday afternoon, the 11th. And really, it's a similar look to what we've seen, but just a little different. And we kind of end things off here with a colder in the east look as we approach the halfway mark of the month. The European model, we still don't see this major blizzard, but we actually do get that first initial storm, which we're much more confident in. Not this one. This one we also see, obviously. That one moves through the northeast. Here comes this second one. Develops much further north, Oklahoma, Kansas there, and what we see is that that low is somewhere in Tennessee, Kentucky, which, if you remember, it was located more over southern Tennessee on the GFS model. Again, Monday morning, January 6th, and we see most of that snowfall for areas in West Virginia, Maryland, a little bit further north than the GFS model showed, and it's a little bit quicker, so we get a little less snowfall with that one as well on this model run as far as totals are concerned. Right around the 9th, we see this moisture. I think a big piece to the puzzle that's missing here is we're not getting such a severe dip in the jet stream. It's not quite reaching the Gulf. So what ends up happening is this northern piece of energy kind of outpaces the southern one. And what this causes, like once it's here and this southern piece is here, your jet stream would already be doing something like this. So this would cause this southern piece to swing way around. We need this northern piece basically somewhere in here, right as this southern piece is either outpacing it or right behind it, and that's what would cause it to be able to follow the jet stream up the coast, because again, the trough would be much more favorable like this at the time. So we need these two pieces of energy to stay somewhat aligned for everything to kind of go in a snowier direction. We see this develop, but look at this. We're already at the 11th, and this storm is way back here. We're seeing snowfall from Mexico, New Mexico, Texas, very far south. It just never gets that pull that we see on the GFS model. So that's a way out of seeing this storm for sure. We do eventually see a low move up, though. We see that by the time we're reaching the 14th, we get a low somewhere around Carolina, some mid-Atlantic snowfall. So it does produce something, but definitely a different look than what we've been showing for a few days. Again, nothing's guaranteed. The cold air, in my mind, is almost guaranteed. Cold air, colder than normal, is almost practically guaranteed. Very severe cold air is like 90+% chance at this point. But the storm and the specifics are much lower odds, and we're going over the model runs together every single day as we always do, but we're going to see fluctuations, and that's always important to keep in mind. As we take a look at the total precipitation, a little bit more underwhelming on the European model than we've seen in the past, because again, this southern piece of energy just stays here. It does not get that pull, and we never see these areas cash in on it. The Northwest kind of regressing as well, a little bit drier. So when we look at the anomalies, almost the entire United States is below average now, if this European model solution is correct. As we take a look at the total snowfall, I guess I should look at the entire United States here, but we see a lot of this for Mexico, Texas, New Mexico, which is really incredible. I mean, this is very odd. But with that deep cold, I would not say it's impossible, but maybe a one-run thing. We're gonna have to watch and see with that, because that is very obscure. We do see 4 areas in the Northwest, the Rockies, the Sierra Nevada here. We do see plenty of snowfall out there. And then again, this low that kind of tracks along the nation, we see snowfall just to the north of it, and quite a bit of it as well. And when we zoom in, I will zoom in now. We'll start in the central states. I don't want anybody to miss out on seeing what we're talking about here. But the pinks are suggesting 10 to 15, maybe more inches of snowfall for Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. And remember, this is the more northern solution of the two models. So here or further south than this would be the more likely areas to see this. We're a little shorter range with this one, so higher confidence that we're going to see less changes. But this is the look for right now on this model. And as we move eastward, we see, again, that kind of swath of 10, 15 inches go through Kentucky, West Virginia, Northern Virginia, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, mostly the Delmarva there, seeing this snowfall event as of now. The GFS model, we get a much more southern solution, and we see Kansas, Missouri still cash in, but this kind of tilts more down towards Virginia, northern North Carolina, like I mentioned, and we still see some for D.C., Maryland, Delmarva, but just a little bit less. So let's take a zoomed in look here at the east on this model. And again, I think this is a little bit more realistic with the amounts for this type of inland storm, talking in terms of 6 to 10, which might even still be too high for a lot of these areas, but I certainly think 10 to 15 is a little overblown potentially for this more inland type system. Typically, to get those very large amounts along the East Coast, you see a coastal low with a whole lot more moisture and a whole lot more cold air to work with over these parts. So keep that in mind as well. But these are the total amounts that the GFS model is currently showing. Again, we've been looking at this for a few days, but the European extended ensemble model here is still calling for plenty of snowfall chances, at least for the deeper south, areas in the middle of the United States, and then in the northern regions, of course. So that is the update of that. As we zoom in, a lot of these areas in the deep south still have a chance of snowfall. We've seen the models kind of back away from areas like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina seeing snowfall. But I think that's mostly due to the model. The model's not really pulling that system up. And I know it seems hard to believe, but these models can kind of go back to an original solution, and we can see a lot more of a pull and a more traditional blizzard along the East Coast. I've seen crazier things, and honestly, a lot of times I have seen them kind of revert back to an older solution of a storm many times throughout my years of just paying attention to the weather. So definitely nothing really crazy. Wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow or the next day we see the models going crazy again. You know, this is definitely typical stuff here. When we look at the temperature anomalies, the European model, the least cold of the two, we do see the greens and kind of purplish blues here around, and some pinks dropping down, but they just don't take over as much. So here's the first, again, getting a little cooler. Second, getting colder. Third, we get the real cold, again, 10 to 15 there in the greens. So for the third, fourth, a little bit more standard with the cool down. And then we get the deeper stuff once we're talking about the 6th, 7th, 8th, and then especially like the 9th, 10th, 11th there, where we're seeing the magentas that are about 25 to 35 degrees below normal. Very, very far departures from what's typical. The GFS model is going to be a little bit more intense here. We look at it here. We see that by the time we're reaching the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, we're seeing that deeper cold. And then right here, 10th, 11th, look at that. Very bright pinks in there. We're seeing a minimum of negative 49.4. So this means 49.4 degrees below normal somewhere in those pinks. We're talking mostly 35 to 45 degrees below normal here throughout this southeast corridor. And this aligns a lot more with what the Climate Prediction Center is showing. So this would be on the very, very severe end of cold air masses, really potentially colder than anything I've really ever seen. So very, very cold. When we look at the actual temperatures and what this would mean is we're really going to see us descend down. This is the actual temperatures. So we're seeing the 6th high temperatures, very cold, 20s for a lot of areas. The low temperatures dropping not too much further down. I mean, we're seeing temperatures in the 20s and teens still. It's really once we reach like the 10th here, look at that cold blast. This is all below 0 degrees here in these green shades. So we're seeing like the entire Ohio Valley, a lot of the Midwest, a lot of the deeper South below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, just insane stuff here. And we see a lot of people in the single digits and teens that it's very unusual for them to see that, you know, as we approach dates like the 11th, 12th, 13th. So very, very cold around that 10th time frame. Now, we've been going over this. We're going to continue doing so. The long range outlooks. Here's the European extended ensemble model. So this is the 31st through the 7th, quite cold in the east, but nothing to write home about. The 7th through the 14th, even on this European model, it looks severely cold in the southeast, just not quite as cold as the GFS. Then the 14th through the 21st, still cold, just a little bit less. Once we take a look here at the GFS extended ensemble model, the 30th through the 6th, here's the look. Let me make sure I refresh this, but this might be the most up-to-date one we have. Yeah, that's all we have to work with. But 30th through the 6th, here's the 7th through the 14th. Looks a little bit colder. We see some of those purplish blues in there, so just a tad colder than the European extended model. Then the 14th through the 21st looks very, very similar. So that's the first basically 3/4 of the month far below normal. That would almost certainly put us in that below normal category at the end of the day. When we look at our CFS model, which is another long range model, we see the same thing. 1st through the 8th here, quite cold. 7th through the 14th, even colder. And then the 14th through the 21st, pretty much in line with what we saw from our previous 2 long-range models. Anyway, guys, it is New Year's Eve. I think that today's video was also very long. I can't see the time on screen now, but I think it was a little shorter than the past 2. I tried to be a little bit more brief because I have festivities to attend to. I hope everybody enjoys their day today. But tomorrow and beyond, we kind of get back to business here with the very in-depth videos, and we're going to really nail down everything coming up. So be sure to subscribe. I'm excited to talk about all of it with you guys. Be sure to hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.